Hello and welcome back to Fear the Waves Inside the Waves show. This is your host, Isaac Popper, and it's not John Burrows in the screen next to me today. It's Nic Rioja. Nick was the head basketball manager for Tulane Hoops last season and has been a manager for the previous 4 years until now, where he no longer lives in New Orleans. I wanted to bring on somebody who had a fan perspective, as so far this season, we talked to Jon Sumrall. We talked with Coach Derek Bugg, Director of Player Development, multiple times on game recaps. We did a game recap with running backs coach Brock Hayes, Landius Wilkerson, another defensive position coach, and have also been recapping games with a lot of your Tulane Green Wave players. So today I want to get the fan perspective and bring on somebody who I know has watched this team very closely over the last couple of years, especially from 2018 until now. So welcome, Nick. How are you doing?
Hey, Isaac. Appreciate you having me on. Super excited to talk a little Tulane football with you. And yeah, like I said, really appreciate it. Excited to share a little bit of the fan perspective. Not as smart as you about these things, but think I can bring something to the table here.
I don't think that's true, Nick, but excited to have you on nonetheless. Not the result we were hoping for against Memphis on Thanksgiving night. Unfortunately, the Wave fell 34-24, but still a lot to look forward to this Friday with the American Athletic Conference Championship game, Tulane's third straight championship game. Nick, after your first 4 years living in New Orleans and following this Green Wave team very closely with a lot of games in Yulman, how crazy is it that we've now clinched, even before this Memphis game, we had already clinched our third straight conference championship game appearance and looking to win our second championship game in 3 years, hopefully on Friday.
Yeah, no doubt something that probably a lot of Tulane fans could have never expected. I was a pretty recent Tulane fan, moved to New Orleans in 2018. Been pretty avid ever since, but yeah, it's something that really wasn't in my wildest dreams. A big thing that I was thinking about after the Memphis game was progress over perfection. I'm sure that's something that Coach Sumrall would probably say in the locker room with traditional coach speak. But I think it is an important perspective to have in this case. We didn't get the result we wanted last week. That's happened a few times this season in some of our bigger matchups, and totally understand that a lot of us might feel a little frustrated by that. But at the same time, I think it's really important to take into account how far we've come. I remember my first game at Yulman. We played ACC team. We hosted Wake Forest in the season opener. And there was some buzz, but it was nothing like the K-State game, nothing like the Ole Miss game. And I know Wake Forest isn't quite that caliber, but even so, having an ACC team come to your place at night, you expect a certain crowd factor in that, and there really wasn't. And I'd say even up to the Cotton Bowl year, that was kind of the turning point. Our freshman and sophomore years were very different. Our freshman year obviously was COVID, so student could only attend one game that year, which was against Temple. And our sophomore year, we were 2-10, not a lot to cheer for. I was trying to think about the turning point in that 2022 season. I would say it was the Kansas State game, but even Southern Miss wasn't a great crowd. The Memphis game actually really stuck out to me. That was a sellout or a near sellout for homecoming, and we jumped all over them. We had to be up 2 or 3 scores pretty quickly. Ended up winning by 10, I believe. But that was I believe the first game that we were ranked in the AP poll, and it was just kind of a culmination of what we had been waiting for a few years, as far as we had wanted good football so bad, and that game was kind of validation that we were for real now. So back to your question, yeah, it's obviously super disappointing we didn't capitalize last week, but we should definitely remember the more lean times in the past, as far as it wasn't always a given that we'd be we'd have a great crowd on national TV, and now that's kind of expected.
Absolutely. It's been quite the fascinating couple of years to follow this team. 3 straight homecoming games now that Tulane has sold out, and that's since that COVID-19 mask requirement was lifted. But another way to look at it is since the buzz about this team, because we all know that 2-10 team is talented. Since people really started to realize, and when I mean people, I mean the average Tulane student, the average local in Uptown, started to realize that this team is for real. They're serious. This athletic department has been serious and is serious about athletics and winning football games, not just academics. So that's been really exciting to see. The previous homecoming is such a stark contrast to that Memphis game. We were together for Tulsa and lost in pretty epic fashion. Part of the reason we were 2-10 that season, but we saw them fight close with Cincinnati that went to the college football playoff as in a 14 playoff and really played some teams close. We saw a great win over South Florida in their last home game of the season that really started to get the ball rolling for next year. And we brought on Nick Anderson last week, who talked about how that team went from 2-10, 10-2, the greatest turnaround in college football history. But we know that it was more than just one season.
Yeah, 100%. And even from a student perspective, if you think about the first few games we went to in 2021, when the first season we could kind of go to all the games, you and I could kind of waltz up to the first row, no problem, even 5 minutes before kickoff.
There was even a game you came at halftime and waltzed into the front row and didn't even have to ask anybody to move or push anybody over.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you think about that, and then you think about me standing in the rain last year for 2 hours before kickoff of the SMU game, in line waiting to get in, line full of students, just stuff that we couldn't have even imagined. And I think is a great example of just how quickly things can flip in college sports. All it takes is the right coach and some wins, and completely change the outlook of the program.
Definitely. And how long did you wait in line for Ole Miss in the conference championship game?
Ole Miss, I think that was an 11 a.m. kick. Probably got there 8:30, just for the front row. Guys like you and me, we want to be up close. So similar for conference championship game, about 2 hours to 2.5 hours before, and there was still students out there with us that were ready for it all. So, I think one thing that Tulane is slowly beginning to recognize is that athletics can actually elevate your academics as well. It's a great marketing tool for the school. And, look no further than what we've done the past few years. You have Tulane, the name Tulane, getting out to a national audience in ways that it really hadn't. And we've kind of reaped the rewards of that. So, yeah, it is something that we can definitely appreciate how far we've come. Even as recently as our sophomore year, we couldn't have imagined hiring a coach the quality of Jon Sumrall, with his track record. So that's another thing. The players that we're pulling in, guys with the pedigree of a Shaz Preston or a Ty Thompson, those guys may or may not have come to Tulane in the past, and having that sort of talent on campus now is more and more commonplace.
Definitely. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this turnaround has really culminated as well, in part with the addition of Fear the Wave Collective, as NIL really started up around that time. But obviously, Willie Fritz and that team put together an incredible run in the Cotton Bowl season. And now Jon Sumrall has done a great job of continuing that. Although this team has 3 losses, it's a freshman quarterback, plenty of new defensive starters, a new coach. There's not many teams in the country with a new coach that are having this much success. Even look at the big players as well. Michigan just beat Ohio State, but they still have more losses than us this season. Washington struggling with a new coach that just went all the way to the college football playoff championship.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
How did you enjoy working for the athletics department while we were talking about athletics?
Yeah, I'd say an experience that I had and anyone that's worked in college athletics has had is the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. I don't think that the common fan would usually appreciate the time that goes into everything behind the scenes. They see the player dribble the ball down the court or the running back, take it 10 yards for a first down. And, they might appreciate that, but they don't appreciate every aspect that went into that. And there's so many variables, even outside of the game, that affect the players and affect winning. So, yeah, I'd say some of my best memories from college are some of our greater wins, and they're just you can't replicate the feeling of putting all of that time in, sacrificing, missing out on things that a normal college student might do in my position as a student employee, and you put in all that sacrifice, and when you win, it's just you can't beat that feeling. It's really just a validation of everything that came before. So, yeah, I'd say my experience working with athletics was fantastic. I wasn't close to, I never had the makings of a college athlete, and I still got to experience Division One athletics in a way that really just was an incredible opportunity for a guy like me who lives and breathes sports. So yeah, that was kind of my experience.
That's awesome. Going back to the Memphis game, did you think it was cool to take over the Thanksgiving spot, or is that something fans didn't really enjoy? Taking it from the Egg Bowl.
Yeah, that's a great question, Isaac. I would say anytime you get a chance to be the only game on TV, I know there was NFL games, but the only college game on TV, I think it's just a fantastic opportunity. I look at some other teams around the country who have been lucky to have some primetime spots and have capitalized in terms of getting fans to talk about them more often. And we had a golden opportunity to do that Thursday night. And to some extent, I'd say we capitalized, although we did not win. But any chance you have to play primetime and get more eyes on your program, I think you have to take it. You say this game's Saturday instead of Thursday, Thanksgiving night, I would say it would capture very little national buzz going up against all the other rivalry games. So having this game in that Thanksgiving night spot was probably very beneficial for us.
Nice. I definitely agree. A great job by the conference to get that spot. When John's on here doing the recaps with me, we like to play a little game where he guesses my ipop's top players. As you know from my Twitter and the show, I pick 6 players every week as my players of the game. So I want to know who you think are going to be some of my 6 players this week.
All right, cool. Well, I have one right off the bat who was my personal top player, although it was very limited action, but I would say Shotty Clayton has to be on there.
Yes, he is, and he had the highest PFF grade on the offense.
Yep. I would say Sam Howard. Did he make his way on there?
Yep, and the best PFF grade among defensive players with a minimum snap count.
Mario Williams.
He did not.
The fumble. Okay, did not. Did Mensah sneak on there?
He did. Better than sneak.
All right, so that's 3. I'm not going to say Duda. Keith. Is Keith on there? He had a couple long catches.
I did not list any wide receivers, but I'll give you 2 more guesses for my last 3 spots.
All right. Rayshawn Pleasant?
Nope.
All right, let it down to my last one. Did Despaney sneak on there?
Unfortunately not, although all your guesses were good guesses. I think they've all had great seasons, and many of them being on the all-conference awards that came out today. At the top, I went with Darian Mensah, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.5 EPA. Unfortunately, the interception really cost Darian at the end, but I thought that until that throw, Darian had played really well, also using his feet and not afraid to do that, something that's been a little bit new as of recently. Pat Jenkins took my top defensive spot with a sack, 3 hurries, and a pass breakup. Then I had Shotty Clayton Johnson, who ended up being the leading rusher despite only having 11 snaps and 2 run snaps, 2 carries. Then Sam Howard, who had a sack, 2 hurries, 6 tackles, and a strong PFF grade. Cam Hamilton for the strip sack. And I actually went with an offensive lineman. Do you have a guess on the offensive lineman? It's really a toss-up with these. They're all good.
Vinny Murphy?
No, but I was thinking about Vinny Murphy. I went with Rashad Green. It's really hard, and I was curious which offensive lineman would be on the first team. I thought maybe Shadre and Vinny did not make the first team in favor of the Army Center, but Shadre Hurst was named all-conference first team along with left tackle Derek Graham, and then Vinny Murphy was second team with right guard Josh Remitich, and then Raw Green on the third team. So giving some extra love to Rashad Green, as the conference did not think he was a first or second team all-conference player, even though I think he is. It's been a great season from the O-line. Would you agree on TV?
100%. And I think there's a correlation there in terms of some of our better wins and games offensively. Makai's been the engine. And as we know, there's a lot more to that than just Makai. I'd say the line's been getting some great push. Mensah's been, for the most part, relatively clean. There's a few pretty notable sacks, especially the one in the Kansas State game. I think some of that can be chalked up to youth and inexperience. And I think he's so poised as it is, even for his age. He'll kind of grow into escaping those mistakes over time. But yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I'd say that, the offensive line's been really stout for the most part. As you said, Murphy, Hurst, Rashad Green, we do have some studs up there. So, that is one point that I wanted to make about the Memphis game is we were really never able to establish the run. And I think that was maybe the biggest reason why we fell short. When there's a quarterback on the other side like Seth Hennigan and kind of a high-powered offense like that, I think that you kind of want to keep the ball out of his hands as much as possible. Makai, like I said, he's been fantastic all year, and he's a machine. And I was looking at some past Memphis games where we've beaten Hennigan and noticed the trend there where, Tajay had a 125-yard game, we win. Last year, Makai goes for 130, we win. So, there's a trend there where, we establish the run, we keep the ball out of Hennigan's hands, we limit his possessions, and we thrived. I thought that we kind of fell behind early. We recaptured it for a minute and then fell behind again. And then once Memphis took that second lead after we were up 10-7, it just kind of felt like we were playing catch up the rest of the game, abandoning the run, even when I kind of felt like we didn't totally have to. And we were just never able to catch up.
Yeah. And you're right. Jon Sumrall has never lost a game when he outrushes the opponent. They just didn't run enough to be able to outrush Memphis, unfortunately. And Memphis did run more plays than Tulane, especially because they converted a lot of third downs, most of them when they were passing. How did you like Darian Mensah's performance? He was my top player from Thursday's game.
Yeah, I thought Darian was pretty good. I'm sure that there's some throws that when he watches back the film, he'd love to have back. I went back and watched specifically his interception because I wanted to see, did he miss an easier check down underneath? I didn't have the all 22 view, so I'm just using the TV footage. But looking at everyone else's routes on that play, all 3 or 4 receivers in the play ran some variation of a deep route. So I wouldn't say that I fault him specifically for forcing that downfield. I would say, a couple years down the line, he probably doesn't force that one long and goes for a safer. Maybe he scrambles out for a couple yards. But at that point of the game, we did not need a home run in one play. I know we were down 2 scores with 7 minutes and change to go, but there's no 14-point play. We don't need to get it all that instant. There's still a ton of time. 7 minutes is a ton of time in football, and I think that was one play he'd really like to have back, which kind of more or less sealed our fate there. And yeah, besides that, I was very pleasantly surprised at how we were developing in the pass game as far as hitting on some of our deeper shots. We capitalized on some balls up the seam. I'm thinking of some to Bauman, Yulkeith. There was a great play in the first half when Darian went through his progressions and the safety valve was Yulkeith. Found him wide open. I think it was on a 3rd and 7 around midfield, and found him. Yulkeith gets a 25-plus yard gain out of it. Those are the type of things you love to see out of a freshman QB. I'd say not a lot of freshman QBs demonstrate that ability to kind of get through their reads at that pace. And yeah, it has me really encouraged for the last couple of games of the year. I'd say we're beginning to open things up a lot more. Mario had a huge day, albeit there was the fumble. But yeah, overall, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Darian. Last thing I'll mention is I think he's getting a lot better understanding of when to scramble, when not to. He's getting a lot better at using his legs. He's a guy that can move pretty well, has some speed there, and at the beginning of the year, I just didn't think he had a great grasp at how to use that to our advantage. And it does seem like he's been progressing in that area a lot.
Yeah, that's also something that I've been really excited about too. Tulane actually only dropped to 7th in the country in EPA per play, my favorite stat, and one that I've been using all season as well as last season, even when it did not like Tulane as much. Tulane finished 72nd percentile in EPA per play, Memphis 77th, only 0.03 EPA per play behind them. And a lot of that was in part due to the interception at the end as well as the fumble. In yards per play, Tulane was 88th percentile and 86th percentile in yards per drop back. Also 85th percentile in 3rd down success rate. All those numbers were just as good or better than Memphis, or almost as good. The only one they really beat us more was the EPA per drop back, but that was because of the fumbles and interceptions and some little bit of a fluke takeaway in some of those fumbles, especially the Mario one. Probably wasn't entirely his fault. Obviously, you want to try to control that football, but if you go back and watch the play, it was a really, really surprising and impressive job by the defender to poke that out. Nick, what are your biggest positives going into the conference championship game outside of the passing game? Maybe one on offense, one on defense.
Yeah, on offense, I'd say Shoddy Clayton's plays were very encouraging. They were few and far between, but I'd say when he came in, he gave a really great spark that we direly needed. He is kind of a good change of pace between him and Makai. Makai kind of the plug and chug guy, and then Shoddy is very explosive. So really encouraged to see a little more Shoddy going forward. Defensively, I'd say Sam Howard was very solid. Like you mentioned, Patrick Jenkins was pretty disruptive on the D-line. We probably wasn't our best defensive game, but we did have a couple of good pass rushes as far as disrupting the pocket, making things tough on Hennigan. And the biggest positive overall for the team I take away from the game is that we got punched in the mouth. And I think we needed that. We were dominant for a few weeks, rolling over some other AAC opponents. And I think we needed that punch in the mouth. We didn't respond great in that game, but I'd say, Sumrall will have his guys ready going forward to make a statement. Similar trend with the Oklahoma game. If you think back, we came out a little bit rattled and we made a great response, came in close at the end. And then from there, we went on a tear after that game. I think we can look to doing something similar the next few games.
I like that. I'm looking forward to it. Not too often you get to play in a conference championship, and I know that this team has been practicing hard in preparation for Army. Thanks to Coach Jon Sumrall. How are you liking what you've been seeing from Coach Sumrall?
Well, I think we should start with his introductory presser, which was super exciting. He, had plenty of talk of grandeur and winning championships, and I think he's going to deliver on that. Obviously, it's not the college football playoff yet this year, but we can still achieve most of our goals as far as winning Louisiana, which we did in our win against the Cajuns, and winning the conference. So baseline there, super happy with that. One area that I think we can see better from Sumrall is that marquee win I think we're still waiting on. We thought it'd be Kansas State, and we came up just short. Oklahoma, same thing. And then Memphis, we had another opportunity there and fell up just short again. With Army, they are a 10-1 team, so a chance to make a kind of a statement win there. I know that those 10 wins are not the strongest 10, but I'd say no matter who you play, I don't care if it's, the American Conference or the SEC or, if you play 10 FCS teams, going 10-0 is a feat, 10-1 is a feat in and of itself. It shows that they play quality football, and a win there would be huge. It'd be kind of an affirmation that he's taking over what the groundwork that Fritz has laid, and he's elevating it. So, yeah, I'd like to see us capitalize on those big game opportunities, but that's fairly nitpicky at this point, especially with a freshman quarterback, so many new faces on the team. I think you can't help but be optimistic about the future, and super excited to see what we have in store the last few games.
Totally agree. And the only loss is to Notre Dame, now top 5 in the country in the CFP poll. As someone who's watched the ACC this season, do you think that Tulane would be able to compete in the ACC? We're seeing SMU in the ACC conference championship game and in the top 10 in the college football playoff, thanks to kind of running the table over in the ACC.
100%. And for viewers, my team growing up was Georgia Tech, which is why I've had some exposure to the ACC. I'm from Atlanta originally, so watched plenty of ACC football this year, and I'd say Tulane more than stacks up with plenty of the ACC. SMU was our peer just 12 months ago, and I'd say really they're not much different than we are as far as talent level, and we got to see a sneak peek of how good they are with Kevin Jennings at the helm. Unfortunately, we fell victim to that, but they've figured that out this season. So yeah, I think we would be more than okay in the ACC. Really, I'd say we finish in the top 5 without question, and I think that our beliefs might be put to the test here in a few weeks, depending on our bowl slot. We might our hypothesis might be tested.
That's a good point, especially if it's in the Fenway Bowl. We played Virginia Tech, an ACC team, in the Military Bowl, one of our main tie-ins last season. But as we all know, Michael Pratt did not play. He was injured. Justin Ibieta got hurt in that game. Jesus Machado got hurt in that game. It was raining, and the passing game just wasn't there. We had a lot of other opt-outs. A lot of players still played, but we were missing some of the O-line, some key secondary members. That really hurt us. And so it just wasn't really a fair match. But maybe if we play in the Fenway Bowl, hopefully everyone plays. We don't have too many opt-outs and chaos with the head coach leaving, and we'd be able to see that. And then if not, then we will get Duke coming to Yulman Stadium next year. So I'm looking forward to that. Believe it or not, Tulane's the last team to beat SMU in a conference game. Their last conference loss was right before we went to our first of these 3 conference championship games, and we scored 59 points on SMU. Nick, before you head out, I just want to ask one question, although it's really 2 parts. I want to know, what is the most enjoyable win that you have had as a Tulane fan the last 6 seasons, both in Yulman and then this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it has to be the Cotton Bowl, right? That was
Well, that didn't answer my question technically.
How so?
But of course it's the Cotton Bowl. The game you attended in person in Yulman, and then one
Right.
game from this season.
Okay, I got you. In Yulman, it would have to be the conference championship without question. I almost wanted to say Ole Miss just to go against the grain, although we did lose. But
It's great atmosphere.
Right. It was a great atmosphere, especially for such an early kickoff. But yeah, it has to be the conference championship. And, that was an amazing day. We rushed the field. How many schools get to rush the field when they win the conference at home? That's very unique to kind of where we were at in the American. And it was just something that anyone that's there will never forget. So that was a great day. And then as far as this season, I would say the Navy game, probably, just for absolute dominance, start to finish. We expected it was going to be a battle. We went there on the road in the cold, playing a triple option team, and really it was never in doubt. We were just flat out absolute lunch pail domination. So that was a super satisfying game, and hope to see that replicated in very similar circumstances this Friday.
I think that was my favorite as well, partly because I was there on the sidelines in Annapolis. Navy hadn't been shut out in over a decade, and we have a chance to do something pretty cool. We're going to be the first school to play and potentially beat Army and Navy on campus since Boston College in 1982. So really excited for this 3rd straight conference championship game, the first one of the 3 that's non-Yulman Stadium, unfortunately, but a really cool opportunity to go and really just make a statement against a 10-1 Army team. Nothing personal. We're really thankful for their service, of course, but excited to go beat a ranked team.
Yeah, like you said, it'd be another opportunity for a ranked win. So
in a conference championship, let's bring the trophy home.
Yeah, definitely. It might impact our bowl standing to some extent, but anytime you have the opportunity to play for a conference title, it's extra special.
Definitely. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Nick, and roll wave.
Thanks, Isaac. Roll wave.